Hey, what's going on, man?
How's it going, brother?
I'm all right, man. How's your world?
Hey man, we're doing amazing. We're doing amazing. Just rolling with it, you know. Rolling with it. It's it's a nice sunny day out here. I'm in Texas. I'm in Texas over here in New Braunfels region. And where are you exactly right now?
I'm in New Jersey right now.
Okay, true. True. In New Jersey,
I'm sorry, I'm sorry you for a second there.
you good, you good. New Jersey was where you did all those videos, right? Is that where you're from originally?
Originally, I'm from New Jersey. Yeah, I did a lot here, definitely, but I did a lot in California too. That's where I live now. But I'm just visiting my mom.
Got you. Got you. Glad you spending time with family. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's always nice, man. You know, like I might come home like twice a year if I'm lucky. So,
Yeah.
but any time I can get back is nice.
Got to get the family time in for sure. I'm sure she appreciates having you around.
Yeah, you know how it is though. I guess like since you're an adult, it's I don't know. It's after a while, I feel like you start to kind of butt heads. You're like, all right, I kind of gotta. I try to stay as long as I can until like it starts to get to that point to where it's like, all right, because you just can't, we can't really change each other. So it's just like all we can do is really accept each other. And so I really, as much as I love coming home, I know it always reaches that threshold where they're like, all right, get out, and you want to leave anyway.
Yeah.
So.
I actually feel you on that, like with my family as well, you know, they say no one's a prophet in their own home, no one is a prophet in their own household. So you're right, like you can't change other people. Somebody told me this, Taylor, maybe you would agree with this. They said when we realize just how hard it is to change ourselves, we might find how impossible it is to change someone else.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that's the only thing that can put it in perspective. You know,
Yeah.
that's it. It's a good one because it's difficult trying to just rewire yourself, let alone trying to talk to someone else based on it's like you talking from your experience and what you realized or whatever, and trying to talk to somebody else. Uh, it's I don't know. It's just I guess it's just the part of experience and unconsciousness. I guess because
Hmm.
like you yeah, I guess that's the only perspective or like event that you can experience where you can kind of get some contrast to where you can see, I guess, once you later reflect, you're like, man, like obviously, it's gonna take something, I guess, a little deeper than just rhetoric. Because it's been times in my own life where somebody would try to tell me not to do something,
Hmm.
even if it was good for me, or if it was good for me or bad for me or whatever, I wasn't gonna listen to them. So it's
Right.
just, I feel like yeah, when that's the tough part is just constantly seeing yourself, and or seeing everything as one to where you can not get lost in it because it ain't. I don't know. It's not like it's nobody really having a different experience than another person because
Hmm.
it's like you got seven sins and the temptation I guess that comes with them, and then um I guess the whatever you want to call like positive physical experiences, whether it be emotions or whatever. Like you're gonna everybody's gonna experience these different states of being like I guess you say high or low or whatever, and you know it's it's nothing that anybody can really tell you. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Like, man, you can't teach. There's no school you can go to and be like, look, I'm about to learn how to be 30 before I'm 30. Like, you're not. You have to go through 30. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? 30 itself, yeah, that is the school. So it's like trying to penetrate other people with words. I mean, you can do your best with actions, but it still doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna apply to themselves.
Yeah.
So it's tough. You just gotta accept people.
Yeah. That acceptance is a big one. The acceptance for sure, the compassion, the empathy, the forgiveness, and just the acknowledgement of these things. Because, when you were talking about maybe not going on other people's guidelines, like, did you always have maybe a rebellious nature or, a nature to go against the conformity of the majority?
It's like in some ways I think like kind of like a broke clock is right twice a day. I don't know. I think in some ways that like again that's why it's hard for me to discount like I guess what people would call negative experiences or whatever. Like because I think I had a lot of toxic traits that kind of ended up working out for me because I feel like I being so toxic in certain ways like and on the extreme ends of it, I think it allowed me to like hit the wall sooner than other people. And so it was, I guess you could say a negative thing on one side because it's like, yeah, you're just being grossly toxic. But then I saw things earlier because I was, I guess maybe hurting myself harder, hurting other people harder to where I could see like a lot. I think I could feel the pain a little quicker. And then I think also, genetic predisposition, I think might have playing an effect on that because I just didn't have that much oil to burn. So like when I would be doing the wrong things, it would bring me to a place of seeing like what is causing a decay so much faster as opposed to somebody else that got a lot of oil to burn and they feel like they got the energy to do whatever and that something might not be so bad for them, like I can eat this or I can indulge in these ways and it doesn't maybe hit them as quickly as it hits me just because I got a different battery, I guess you could say, and just a different, so that just brings a different sensitivity. And like, I think that since I had like slothfulness, like laziness and like um, pride in my life, so hard, I feel like in some respects it kind of ended up helping me too at the same time, just because it brought me to pain quicker, I think, than maybe somebody else that they don't really have such a sharp, um, like wrathfulness that might be in them. Like I feel like I kind of started out not not really in good standing with my own energy and anger and what all of that was. So I think that kind of burned the candle on both ends to where I was like, yo, I got to do something quick.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of, I guess to other people, it looked like, oh yeah, you ahead of things, but it's like kind of just relative to the way I managed the energy, my own energy early on.
Yeah.
So like, yeah,
That
I
is
don't know.
that's interesting, brother. That's an interesting perspective. Like it brought you to pain quicker, you know, that you didn't have to, I guess, go through or grow through so many things that other people do later in life. It sounds like you were able to do a lot of things earlier because you went through the pain faster.
Yeah, and because I think that I just I just felt like I have I don't have I wasn't like given like a huge abundance of energy. I think like whether you have a lot of energy or not, it's like you got to establish some type of balance to where your energy is steady. So if you have a lot of energy that like potentially, but your energy is not steady, it doesn't really help you anyway. But I feel like I didn't have an abundance of energy. So like my balance, I had to really manage it a lot better. Like I feel like so what I see from my peers that had a lot of energy, I feel like they continued to misuse sex and misuse food and misuse chemical experiences in general to where they're in their 30s and 40s with habits that I don't have because I feel like early on, and then also on top of that, I held out, I feel like a lot longer in some regards as far as like intoxicating myself chemically. Like I didn't smoke weed till I was 18. I didn't really get into drinking like consistently or anything like that till later on. And then I'll have years of not doing anything. Even in my 20s, like I would have years of sobriety, years of not drinking, or a year of no sex or stuff like that. And then I guess since like the pendulum was so sharp with me, but I held off. So I just feel like I held off. Like I didn't overdo anything because I was really just focused on like just trying to play
Right.
football. So I really didn't. I feel like only thing I overdid was food. I feel like I wasn't like too like oversexed or like gone off of women or or drugs. None of that was there. The food was my problem. So like I felt as soon as I changed certain things, I just felt like significant significant changes. Whereas I think somebody that was smoking since they was 14 or whatever, like a lot of my peers or younger, they would they don't feel that. I feel like because they having a super abundance of energy. A lot of them had a super abundance of energy, and then they started so early that they never got used to even like experiencing what they really could have had. because even if you have an abundance of energy, if you never really experience it to its full potential and you harness it and like you have like you steady it, then you never really it doesn't really matter. You all so much energy is going to be wasted.
Mm.
And so I feel like a lot of people are in that boat where they kind of got comfortable because they like, yeah, I got all this energy, I can do whatever I want. I can have 7 mistresses and a girlfriend, and I could be smoking weed and eating cheeseburgers. I could do this, and then since they have a lot of oil, they got the energy to burn. They can do that maybe to their 40 or 50, but then like all at once, if you're in that momentum, like all at once, you're gonna experience sickness so
Mm.
much faster
Eesh.
because you hit like 50 or 60 or whatever, 45, and
Yeah.
then chronic disease is already. You don't have no other habits but destructive ones.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So
it
it
didn't
hit
matter.
you in a major way, all at once. Yeah. It's like a culmination of all the habits, just a big accumulation of it just drop down on you like an anvil, just wow.
Yeah.
Wow. When you were talking about how food, you said was your biggest struggle or your challenge, why do you feel like that was such a challenge?
Um, I feel like because as far as American food is concerned, it's like there's there's really no culture to it. At least like the America that I come up in, like maybe somebody from a different time period, they'd be like, yeah, there was still some culture to the food, but I feel like there's no culture to it. Like in a sense, it's like either you're a colonist and you like colonist food or whatever, you cook colonist food, or you are an indigenous that got subjected to colonist food. You know what I mean? And I just feel like for me, the food that I grew attached to, since my dad was never the one cooking, it was my mom's food and her family. So they're melanated people. So I feel like the food I was eating was just typically, what you would call like soul food or
Like,
slave food or whatever. What you
are we talking about like chitlins, mashed potatoes, collard greens, macaroni and cheese?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, that's what yeah.
okay.
That was what that was my introduction to food. As far as and like family gatherings was that food. So like I think all kind of even love in general was surrounded by or was surrounding the food in a sense or whatever. Like it was all that was the meeting point
Mhm.
for a lot of things. And so I think that coming into that, I'm like I don't really know what nutrition was. I didn't know what like genetic specific nutrition was. I didn't know about any of that stuff. So I feel like my relationship with food was like a crazy one in a sense because like I think that it's tough in general for people to get off of what they're indoctrinated with as far as food goes. But like I think when you like add that other layer of slavery being thrown into it, I
Mhm.
think it really I think it throws off the whole your whole relationship with food. So my relationship with food was really kind of no different than a slave's, and
Mhm.
like so I think that
No different.
I don't think
You
it's
said no different.
yeah, like where food is just I don't know, like there's so many voids in my life, and kind of the only thing that I can experience um is like emotional, like or as far as emotional satisfaction is through the food. I mean, I'm unconsciously doing it at these times, like this shit is all associated with being together, having family, is eating this food. And so I was a big attachment to that food, and anything that like mimicked those textures and tastes I had a big attachment to. So
Yeah.
um and it wasn't until like I went to California and got away from my family like altogether that I was like having to make food for myself consistently
Mhm.
to the point where because I was just like an athlete. So,
Mhm.
I would a lot of the times, I'm eating what people give me or what I get for free or whatever, or like if my mom makes something, I don't really have I'm not spending any time. I'm going to school and playing sports, and I'm not really spending any time making my own food. Like everybody just wants to push me to go to the next level. So they just taking care of that for me in a lot of respects. And so I didn't have to control that. And then when I did have to control it, when I went to college in California and there was nobody around, I just saw immediately like what, what was just not for me. Like, I just knew I couldn't eat certain things. And then so it was immediately like, okay, no dairy. Change of climate, change of like going from humid all my life being on the East Coast to California, and then it just changed it. Everything, my whole appetite changed. And then, yeah, 'cause as soon as I got rid of dairy, my mind just changed. Like, so much space opened up, I felt like.
In what way? Like how did you open up when you cut that out in particular?
Well, my skin was bad. I had really bad skin throughout high school. Really from like eighth grade throughout high school, my skin was like, I would be breaking out. And then like when I played football, so I would get like acne underneath the pads because my skin, it just couldn't breathe because I was just detoxing through my skin because I was eating trash. So I was eating trash and then covering up my body with these pads, and it would just like make my skin break out. And like again, I don't have the melanin to have like that density in my skin of light in the skin to where it'll have enough pressure in the system throughout the whole tissue to where you can detox better just the normal way, through defecation and urination and breath. Just be the body is just totally different. It's wired differently, you know what I mean? Like if you have a more broad features, you're taking in air differently, your lungs is different, the shape of the lungs is different. And then if your skin is tight and you got a lot of light in it, then all your tissue is reflecting that density of light, you could say, or that pressure of light.
Mm-hmm.
So where like if you take something in, you can digest it at a different rate because you just have more light. So for me, I didn't have the tolerance. So I started to see lack in certain ways immediately. Like when I would remove things, I could just see improvement instantly. And if I eat something bad, I can just it's gonna show itself in no time.
Right.
And I think it's the same way for everybody, but I think it's just so dire for me because I just can't tolerate it. I don't have the energy and that inner like pressure.
Yeah.
It's not that much. It's not as much light. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I
Like,
couldn't do
go
it.
ahead. Would you
No,
say?
I was just saying. So I couldn't hang. I had to change
Yeah.
early.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that you couldn't tolerate it. Like there were so many things as well that I resonate with that I wasn't actually able to tolerate, but I was just kind of forcing myself. I was kind of forcing myself to ingest and try to digest certain things that were not the best, that I didn't, I was very restless. I was very reckless, with the energy that I didn't know how to transmute that. But when you talk about, tolerate, I remember one of my friends, he said about the people that say that they're lactose intolerant, talking about, staying away from dairy. He said, what if we're not lactose intolerant? What if no one is lactose intolerant? What if we're just not a baby cow, like a baby calf?
Yeah.
What if like consuming fluids from other species, like what if we're just not designed for fluids that are coming from other species? Like, it was interesting just to hear him say that. And as I'm listening to you, Taylor, what was the deviation? What was like the biggest deviation away from food entirely when you just kind of went to what most people would call extreme and let go of it completely?
When did I experience like
When
the
did that
first
happen?
major?
Yeah, when did that come into play?
Well, like the whole first year of veganism, like, because I reached a point, like I said, I was like testing what was good and what wasn't. At this point, I had already known about Sebi. I got introduced to Sebi, but I didn't have the experience to like reference to be able to. I knew what he was saying was true, like in an innate way, but I didn't have the experiences to like really reference to where I could navigate through life, like based off my experience. So I was just kind of like fumbling through things, and then like I would fall off track and get back on it or whatever. But I just didn't know because I wasn't thorough as I could have been, and at the same time was not. I was not very literate, and I was definitely not very health literate. So it was things that I was missing. So when I would, one time I dipped off the path too far, and
Too
I got really, yeah, like this is in the process of becoming vegan. I dipped off the path too far, and I had like some ice cream because I had like got some money,
mm-hmm.
and I was like, fuck it, I have some ice cream, and I just had a bunch of ice cream that night, and I remember just feeling so sick from that
Mm-hmm.
that kind of forced me into like I couldn't. It was like my throat was tight, and I I could only really tolerate juices and fruits, or juices and water anyway. So like, I just from being introduced to Sebi and him saying like 90 days of fasting and all of that, right? To me, it was like, all right, well, I mean, I guess I'll get started with this. And so I did like juice for 3 days, and then I just would go periods like maybe 6 hours or so, no juice, and then I was like, yeah, I feel better, and then it would just be like no water. I mean, nothing but water for 3 days, and then upon coming back, it was like the ninth or 10th day, total. So it was like 3 days juice, kind of 3 days of water and juice, and then 3 days nothing but water. And then I tried to come back, and it just always like to eating food, and it just felt terrible.
Mm.
And I didn't, because I was improving. I felt like my cognition was improving,
Mm.
but I was coming from sickness. So then it kind of started to make sense. Like, well, if I was already healthy and I did this, then, what would I experience at that point? So that kind of having that experience brought me to a different place. Like, I lost a bunch of weight. I went from like, just from that period, I went from like probably like 204 or somewhere between 204 and 208, somewhere in there, to like 188. So like,
You,
I don't know. I feel like,
you,
and
you were feeling different. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So and at the time, I was I was like sought after as an athlete, and people were like trying to get me to go to the university and stuff. And then I ended up, kind of just not wanting to play football no more, because it got in the way with that. Because
Mm-hmm.
it was like, I was like, man, I started off kind of wanting to go vegan to just be a better athlete. But then as I experienced like what actual fasting was, it was like I'm not even really experiencing my consciousness correctly. So
Mm-hmm.
it left me with more questions than answers. I'm like, fuck, I have to ask, I need to search more. So I just couldn't allocate the time to caring about football. And I
Right.
remember just going through, yeah, so I remember at that point going through Dr. Africa's whole catalog. Cause I got through Sebi shit, and I'm like studying, I'm like a Sebiite, like I'll die for Sebi at that point. And then, so I started studying other people that was like, in the references. This was when YouTube wasn't totally awful.
Okay.
And then, so Dr. Africa was, his shit was popping up, and I was like, all right, he's way more. Sebi, I think his perfect message is fine, but I feel like Dr. Africa is way more like, he's way more, I guess you could say, mainstream, like with the science of it. His
Okay.
science, his scientific explanation of it is something the mainstream can't run from, like as opposed to Sebi, where they can try to play him.
Mm-hmm.
But so Dr. Africa was way more specific in it to me, explaining it. And so I took his course, and then I run into he didn't even moderate his own course. It was this guy named Farrell that ran the course. That was the moderator. You send your work into him, and you gotta do conference calls with him, and then you eventually you get your certification. But Farrell, like I'll be asking him this shit, like, yo, so what do I do as far as eating? Like, do I do this? Do I do that? And he would always, like, even when because I would try to get like I'm trying to get a diet that can serve like 2 dogs, I'm only supposed to be feeding 1 dog. Like, I got this other dog that's like, yo, I just want to be a football player. I want to get this money in these different ways and be really vain. And then it's like the real me that is just the real me. But I was trying to like be both.
Yeah.
And so I'm like trying to like uh, get a diet that can allow me to do both. And I'm asking him questions like, so should I eat more of this or less of this? And he always like, he would never give me any firm answers, and to the point like, where one time I was fasting, and I was like, yo, what should I break my fast? It was like 3 days fast. I was like, what should I break my fast with? And he was like, air. And I'm like, and I was like, what the fuck? Yeah, yeah. I like the fuck you talk, Yeah,
I can imagine your reaction. I can.
yeah, yeah, man. So I'm
He
like,
said, what was your response when he said that?
I was like, what do you mean? Because there was this. I remember seeing this couple, because this dude that used to follow me, it was kind of cool having a good follower in a sense, because he'd be asking me questions, trying to, and all that shit would have to make me be better. So he was like asking me shit like, yeah, what you think about breatharianism? And like at the time, like I was just thinking like I didn't have a name for it. I just thought like, what, just mean alchemy? And so he sent me this video of this couple, Akai and Camilla, and they were like, yeah, we had the breatharian pregnancy or whatever. And so I'm listening to that, and I'm like, he don't seem like he's lying. As much as like people be like, this is crazy. I'm like, yo, he don't look like he's lying. I think at the time it was like in their mid 30s, and he looked like he was like 18.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing, and her too. She looked really young.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm like, damn. And he just did. It didn't look like he was like lying about what he experienced. Like he didn't have no flinch in him. There was all like he was just like giving you the accounts of what he experienced, like going from just fruit juices to water to just air for longer periods of days than most people would accept. Right. And so I seen that shit, and then she was saying like all I had the whole time when I was pregnant was juice and water, and she was like I ate twice in the whole pregnancy. You know what I mean? And I was just like, damn. It seemed like damn, all right. It didn't seem like they was lying, and I really don't think they was. Now that I've got to
it
this
sounds
point,
like it sounds like you're a good judge of character. Like you can sense truth in another being. You know?
Yeah, man. Like if it fuck with me, I guess, like because it's always stuck with me. And then so when Pharaoh never gave me like firm answers on what to eat or what not to eat, and then he told me that I should break a fast with air. I was like, all right, I think I can put these pieces together now. Like as far as at that point, as far as diet is concerned, it's like, damn, you got to give up everything, kind of in a lot of respects. Like everything that you know now, you get like another life. Like you get everything equal to it. But like that whole, as far as that lifestyle that people would call extreme, is like, yeah, you just totally, the process of eliminating everything that is unnecessary and more like emotional attachment and vanity.
Right.
And then, so yeah, I think from that point, then I started to really experience like extended fasts. And
yeah.
So then, yeah, my first week of water fasting, like I ended up doing like 8 days on my first one.
Whoa.
And
first one?
On my first one that I was like, I'm gonna do it long, because up until that point I did them for like a day or 3 days.
Okay.
That was my typical. And then I was like, I'm gonna try and get this week off. And then so I did, but I was like, I'm just gonna do water. And then so on the 8th day, on the 7th day, I felt like shit. I felt like terrible, and like because the first 6 days were kind of cool. Like I was really, I think, young enough to where, and I was athletic, like I was using my body enough to where my lymphatic system wasn't so bad because I was move around and I was young, to where the pressure wasn't so bad. I was still getting a lot of the toxins out. Mm-hmm. But by the 7th day, it really hit me. Like I was like, fuck, I'm fucked up. You know what I mean? Like I'm like sick right now. But then I woke up on the 8th day, and I felt like incredible, man. I was like, fuck, and it was like a different kind of calmness in me. Yeah. And so I just never experienced that, because that's kind of what got me into vegan. Because the first vegan I ever met, she was just mad calm. This raw vegan lady. She was like West Indian, and she was like in her 70s, and I was like 18 at the time, and her skin looked great. My skin was all fucked up. I was insecure about my skin, so I was like, damn, your skin looks great, and she was just mad calm. So I was like, I never experienced nobody be that calm in my life. And so then, yeah, so I just, I kind of always had that in me, like that, as that's kind of like your measuring stick, I guess, where it's like, how calm are you really though? And like, because it's not to say that you can't challenge yourself in physical ways and stuff. It's like the great people are calm, great fighters, and people that do anything physical, they're still calm. Right. It's just you might not be, you might not be calm watching it or competing against it, but the person winning is more calm.
Where did they say that, Taylor? Where's that? Where they say the best fighter is never angry?
I think it's The Art of War.
Okay,
Sun Tzu.
The Art of War, Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu. So the best fighter is never angry. I heard that. That's like a Chinese proverb. Yeah.
I think it's Sun Tzu.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, like
it makes sense. It makes sense because when I used to spar in the gym as well, training in the gym, getting in the ring with people who wanted to throw haymakers and knock you out. Like when you were calm, when you had your wits about you, when you didn't allow the pressure to get to you, you could see things coming. It was very telegraphed. Yeah.
Yeah. The only way you can really be calm is if like you just spend time in that space. You're always in the gym or whatever. You always, doing what you got to do to where you can trust your body, right. And you don't have to. And that's kind of what I was experiencing with the fasting. I was like, I'm eliminating different foods in my life, and I'm going through extended periods of fasting. And like now I'm just it's like being in the gym to where I'm just like working out. And I'm like, oh, I'm okay with 3 days of fasting. Let me do a week. So I get to a week, get to 8 days. And I was about to, because I was going to go on a trip to Australia. So I was like, I'm going to just fast into that point. And I was like, damn, I feel so good once I bounce back from the the low period on the seventh day.
Mm-hmm.
On the eighth day, I just remember being like, yo, I don't want nothing. I'm so, you know what I mean? I don't want nothing. I mean, it felt like maybe never again.
When,
But like,
that was when you resurrected. That was when you came.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I was like, I don't want nothing ever again. But at the time, I was married, and we was gonna go to Australia, and she was just like, yo, come on, I know you ain't about to, She was like more like on that shit. Like, you ain't about to be fasting the whole time we on vacation. And I was more vain at that time too, to where I was like, not realizing how special that is
Mm.
to be at 8 days of nothing.
Right.
Because I don't know, I feel like you could, if anybody's in that position and they feel like they can go longer, they should go longer.
Mm.
Just because of what it does for them on a personal level and for the collective. Like, so I think I was just like, oh, I could just come back to this point, and as much as like I could and I did,
Mm.
it's like it stunted the growth. You know, if I would have went to Australia and just kept it rolling, then it would have probably got me out of the relationship earlier, which would have been healthier. And
Oh,
then, and I would have been, and I would have, I would have withstood another challenge of temptations. So
that's
I don't know. It was,
yeah.
yeah.
That's a
The,
perspective. That's perspective. Like you saying you would have avoided certain situations or even got out sooner if you would have just kept it rolling and kept the energy going, and kept it flowing. It's interesting that you put it that way, because like even when you're talking about not only what it does for you individually, but you briefly mentioned, you said you would suggest that somebody does that for what it does for the collective. I don't often hear that perspective. So could you briefly touch on that? Like, what is fasting or, going without? What is it actually doing for the collective as a whole?
yeah, I mean, yeah, this is Hua Ching verse, the book Hua Ching by Lao Tzu. He was like, the master doesn't the master doesn't see like a student and teacher or self and other or heaven or hell. So it's like there's nowhere to be. There's no other. They don't have to raise anybody up. They don't feel separation. It's like there's no one to be raised and there's no honor to be gained in a sense. So it's like I feel like fasting and being and living your regular like living the life that you were kind of designed for is more so just like paying the electric bill. It's nothing to brag about. It's like the most humble shit to do anyway. So I think that yeah, yeah, man, like that whole process kind of just shows you that there's no separation, and then once you really get into fasting, you're gonna experience dreams differently, and then that's when you're starting to really influence the collective,
Okay.
because you're waking people up in the dreams.
Okay. In the astral.
Yeah, I mean that's like that. I would say like more so like interest in reality, man. Like because there's like the difference between I feel like when you do fast and stuff, you see the difference between me having a memory and then just having to just remember it and accept it so I can see it more clearly, and I can alter the past by altering the future by, accepting that. And then, or that's, so that's like, really a lot of people experiencing memories when they think they're experiencing dreams. And I
Whoa.
feel like, so when you actually fast and really change your thinking and your whole way of life in a respect, it's like you can discern the difference between memories and actually dreaming, which is just reality, experiencing reality.
Okay. Like the matrix within the matrix, like Inception, like a dream within a dream within the dream. And you said something that sounded like Marty McFly, like Back to the Future. You're going back to the future. You're saying you change the past by changing the future. Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, no, like if you have that clarity to where you can actually remember a memory when you are in REM sleep, or REM, I shouldn't say it's not really sleep. It's just when you're in REM. Like if you have the ability to really fully recall a memory in REM, then you can actually see the memory for what it is, and then you can see how it affects the decisions that you're going to have to make when you wake up that day. And
Okay.
so then by that by acting in that way, you change the future by through that process of really recalling the past. because like the present, yeah, because the present is what's causing the past, and the past is causing the future. Like all of the past is coming out of the present. So like a lot of people, they think that, for one reason or another, that when they remember something, or they have a memory in their head, like that they're living in the past, and it's like, no, you're creating that right now in the present
Mm.
by recalling, on a chemical level, by just recalling it over and over again.
Mm.
It's not because in the present moment, say something bad happens, you're in the present moment, it just happens, you experience it, and then after that, then you got to live with it for the rest of your life. And people don't. That's the part where people get lost, and they think that, by recalling it is actually experiencing it again.
Ooh.
And it's like, no, that's yeah, that's like your projection of the memory. It's like a retro projection
Okay.
of but you create it right now in the present. So
Right.
your perception of the past, like your recall of it, is stemming from the present. So everything, the past is always determined by the present. So and so you have to see it clearly. And most people don't recall the memories clearly, consciously. So they got to go into REM. They kind of go through like factory reset, and then then they go through the REM process, and they experience the memory again. And then if they were treating their bodies right, then they have enough space, I guess you could say, to where they can recall, most or all of the memory. But most people are just, what they call dreams is just, yeah, like you call them past lives or parallel lives or whatever, but it's just all memories. And then they're just going through different memories. It's like if you could jump out of a film into another film below it or something. It's like the same way. I don't know how old you are, man, but like I don't know if you remember. You remember VHS and
Yeah,
cassette tapes?
yeah, I remember even Betamax. I remember all that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like VHS and cassette tapes,
Mm-hmm.
and anything with a film on it. If you um if you record something over it, because you could just pop it in there, put the little piece of cotton in the hole, and then you could record like MTV Jams or whatever over top of some shit. Say if you rented Red Riding Hood,
Yeah.
or you bought Red Riding Hood, and it's a VHS you had laying around, you could be like, I'm gonna just cover up the little hole on the tape itself, pop it in the VCR, and I'll just record my favorite music videos or
Right.
whatever. And so now this is what you see when you pop this VHS in, but the Red Riding Hood is still underneath. It's
Right.
just impressioned on top of the magnetic strip or the film, whatever you want to call it. So you got all these layers of lifetimes stacked on top of the film, and they're all there concurrently.
Yeah.
So the only thing that like will wipe it clean is what people are calling a reset.
Okay.
So whether people say coronal mass ejection or some type of electromagnetic event or meltdown or whatever,
Wow.
somehow, yeah,
That is.
you can get yeah, because like they have these things where you can wipe. It's like a magnetic device where if you have a cassette tape, you can just run this magnetic device over top of it, and it cleans it all. You won't have nothing on there no more. So now it's a free tape, and you can record all new stuff.
Okay.
So there's and also like an FBI or whatever alphabet agency, when they want to get rid of old tapes, they run that magnetic thing over top of it, and it just wipes them all clean. So there's nothing on the tape no more.
Right.
So
Right. That reminds me
so
of
yeah.
you remember Men in Black?
Yeah,
Men in Black, they used to have this device called the deneuralizer. You remember?
yeah,
There was
yeah,
like a deneuralizer that they would come up
yeah,
and they would wipe the civilians, their memory of this galactic, alien encounter, this event that happened. They would just kind of wipe, the memory with the deneuralizer and then just kind of be on their way. Yeah. So
yeah,
factory reset. So bringing you back down to the default settings or factory settings.
yeah. So that's why I think that happens like on a mass scale, like periodically,
Mhm.
like musical chairs.
Yeah.
So some people will be able to find their chair and they make it through, and then the reset happens, and then a bunch of people get wiped. A bunch of, I guess you could say, knowledge kind of just goes into the ether instead of being embodied.
Okay.
And now we reset with kind of like a missing organ or like a missing finger or something. It's kind of the same thing, like on a grand scale with families too. Like the way people are reincarnating, and they're missing whole families. Some people, people basically, don't have a father. They don't have a father figure. They might not have father or mother. They might, so or they might not have good relationships with the in-laws. So now the kids don't know one side of their family or whatever it is. So now people reincarnate in a way that kind of reflects the whole situation, where you're just being reincarnated, like missing a kidney or something. And now you don't know. Now you don't really know your father, or you don't know your cousins, or you don't. And so now you don't know your body. All of that's like the same reflection of just not knowing yourself and the likeness of yourself,
Let's see.
and then you get used to then you get used to operating from the unlikeness, and then that becomes the norm.
Okay. Okay. What was it that and I'm wondering, when you were getting into Akai and Camilla, Akai, Ricardo, and Camilla, and when you were feeling truth coming from them, that what they were saying was somehow true, even though it was just kind of so far-fetched or so far out there at the time, you were like, this seems true. It feels real. Was that the time that you also met up with Audrey Bear?
No, I had that. This is like at that time. That's like 2011, 2000, end of 2011, beginning of 2012. So I was still married to my first wife at this
Right.
time. So then, yeah. So I
So when did
mean,
that
she's watching it too. And
Yeah, when did that encounter happen?
me and Audra,
Yeah.
2018.
Okay.
I want to say like August 2018.
So that's probably when I started watching you on YouTube, because I remember the videos where you were talking about, like, breatharianism. You were talking about it with Casey as well,
Yeah,
and it just, the talks that you had were tremendous. It was like I felt like I was just listening to just a genius mind, and you were writing so many books, like these breathwork books, these what was it? It was like Tantra. It was like, it was always links in the description, and I was like, oh man,
yeah,
he's writing all these books, and he's reading from the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu, and he's reciting these scriptures, and it's off the dome, just off the top of your head, like a freestyle. The stream of consciousness was just channeling and flowing through the screen and just hitting me, each time I was watching you. So when you came in contact with Aja, how did that, I guess, how did that impact you? Where did that take you, or where did you take her?
um, man, I think, man, it's funny. Like, I guess, winning and losing is really a gradient. Like, I don't know. I guess it's the best way to explain that one. Because, man, like, I was with a chick at the time that I should have just been with her, to be honest. You know what I mean? It would have been much more simple. It might not have been as gaudy. I might not have like reached as many people. But I think you know, I was just really vain and in it for the wrong reasons. And again, just taking things for granted. So I think I just thought that the chick that I was with I'll just meet another one like that. Like there'll just be another one. You know what I mean? And I was just taking that for granted. And so I think that in one respect, like the real me was like, oh fuck, this is a crazy fumble. Ah, I fucked up. But then on another respect, like I guess the more my alter was like, well, this way we could penetrate the minds of a lot of people and get a lot of people to do the breath. And it was kind of like just a more in a contrivant way, like where I was like, man, I know if I get this person with this face, with this reach, um, I think because at the time, she was a dancer, and I felt like if I could get her, because she was already like doing Robert Morse school or whatever, and so I was like, okay, she's already pretty well versed and stuff, and I felt like, man, I know it'll work if her face was to be projecting the message. I knew, or some, just the breath in general, and so I knew that would work. So for me, instead of just letting people have their process and letting myself have my process, and just have a real authentic interfacing with the chick that I was seeing at the time, the one that actually would mesh better with me,
Mhm.
like on a real level. Like I feel like I had, you know, I made the choice, I guess, or I allowed my alter to make the choice to where I'd be like, fuck it, I'll just force people to understand this shit because if I get this face saying it, then it'll ring bells around the world. And it ended up doing that. It did all of that, but then it was like, the shit, it's like, be careful what you wish for, man.
Okay.
I got,
There
because I
was
did it for the wrong reasons.
it was a double-edged sword.
Yeah, and that's not, I'm really not to take shots at her or nothing. I just think that match was not, it obviously didn't endure. So
Okay,
it was obviously a mismatch, but I'm not saying there's anything wrong with her. I just knew that I was getting into it for the wrong
got it.
reasons. And,
Too.
and then over time, I feel like same thing with her. Like she was into it for the wrong reasons, and we just came to that place where it's like this is not gonna continue no more. You know what I mean? It's obvious that it's not gonna continue. So
Okay.
yeah,
I see what you mean when you say, careful what you wish for. They say you just might get it.
yeah,
It
yeah,
is.
yeah, man, yeah.
Would you would you say that in general, that relationships, in the pranic journey or when you're practicing, a more breatharian lifestyle or just living without food, would you say that relationships are really tricky on that type of frequency?
Yeah, I think it's just funny, man. It's the slippery slope with certain things because, like, in different respects, I mess with chicks that are not they when I first met them, they were not vegan and stuff, and they would be more willing to change. And I feel like if I mess with a vegan, sometimes that they be kind of stuck in their own ruts, and they kind of became lax in certain areas. And then like if I stay close to them long enough, then now it's like we both slacking together. But it feels like you can kind of have a cop out where you're like, well, everything we eating is vegan, or, you know what I mean? Whether it just be eating too much or eating out or things, just eating things you shouldn't eat. That's just technically vegan. And I feel like so sometimes it's like a slippery slope with that one where you can like, I feel like let somebody into your life that is what you think that think you should be with, I guess. And then it's like now y'all both slack
Mm,
because you feel like, oh, we're already kind of where we want to be and we're already
yeah.
better instead of like. So I think I think it could go either way. I think it's times where I fumbled, where the chick I felt like I was just too hard on her and I wanted her to understand things too fast, and she would have been a good partner
Mm,
if I'd have just had patience to like let her go through her own processes and stuff. And so yeah, it showed my own immaturity, and I guess they just reflected that, and it's why I just never played out. Because
okay.
yeah,
Okay. Okay. Were you the one that pushed or maybe that encouraged or empowered Casey to start speaking, or was she the one that did it for you? Like, which one of y'all did it for each other?
my sister was more like I don't even know, like she's just like a typical blogger, I guess, in a lot of respects. Like she would do like all the challenges, like so I don't know if she ever did like the ice bucket challenge or whatever, but it'd be like all her fucking. She was just doing stuff like that. Like she was doing. She wasn't even. I actually went to start. She was just behind the camera. She went to school for photography. So
I know.
by that point, yeah. So by that point, I had already had some videos that went viral and some I guess some experience with the net for some years. At that point, by the time when she was still going to school being a photographer, and then I was like, yeah, you should make a YouTube. Yeah, I think people will follow you. And she was just making content like about anything, like a siblings challenge or this challenge, do this. She's like kind of just again, like kind of like following the trends because I think it was just like a side thing for her. Like she wasn't really thinking like this could be my life. And then as when she came and see me in Arizona in 2018, I got her into the breath work because it was tough. Like I can't, it's hard to make your sibling do anything. So I never pushed her. Like I remember going vegan. It was such a big thing in my house. It was different, but they kind of understood where I was coming from because they heard what Sebi had to say. But my sister, she was like vegetarian, like kind of on and off vegetarian for like a minute, and then she finally went like fully vegan. Like it took like some years because she was in a different experience than mine, I guess. So it is what it is. And then so it took her a minute to where I was like, "Yo, you come on, you ready for this breath work? You've been vegan for some time now. You should do this breath work." And so she got into it, and then I remember her telling me like, "Yeah, my brain kind of just been rebooting, and it just feels so different, like having access to different parts of my brain now." And yeah, So I think that she just saw the benefit of it, and then she started doing it every day, and then she stopped, and then she would just ask me different things about it or whatever. I never pushed her none because I never felt like I just didn't. I wanted it to stick.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Inception kind of where you be like, look, they got to think it's their shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Plant,
Like,
plant that seed and
yeah,
just water it, you know, let it
yeah,
sprout on its own. Yeah.
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 Let them water the shit. Let them be like, yeah, I put this here. And
Yeah.
so like that's kind of how I felt about it. I was like, man, I introduced it to her.
Yeah.
It's nothing I can really do. I've introduced it to a lot of people and they never do nothing.
Okay.
So I felt like, man, I really with her, I guess it's like imperative that I just don't tamper with it. So then once she got into it, she really started to take off. I think it gave her or showed her identity a lot more to where she could be confident doing certain things. And then, I don't really know. She puts a lot of that the stuff that I feel like is a lot more edible for this generation. You know what I mean? So I think it's a nice space, avenue that she's in.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm just like, yo, here goes an hour and a half. Yo, I'm gonna be talking that shit. Y'all ready to hear this shit? You know what I mean? Like and it's not really, it's not, it's not polished, so I don't get certain viewers, and that just is what it is. But she gets what I don't get, I guess you could say.
When it comes to the practices, the breath work, and I remember, you know, you had the whole elements. There was like, you know, almost like the Avatar Last Airbender. You had like the air, earth, fire, water. Like there were so many different rituals and regimens and routines that you were doing on a daily. Do you still keep up with those practices on the daily, or has it changed?
Man, I haven't missed like an hour and a half of breath work in a day in a long time. So that's like the bare minimum is like just hour and a half or whatever, and then um, stretching and some sort of at least some push-ups and sit-ups. Like most days of my life, I feel like I feel like I'm getting at least that, and then like on other days, I'm doing this thing called the Feldenkrais method, like maybe like 3-4 times a week. I was doing it every day, but I feel like you can, yeah, I definitely rotate things, doing different things, like targeting different areas of my body and using essential oils and stuff like that too to open different things up and on different parts of my body.
Hmm.
And definitely before dreaming, certain oils and you
Hmm.
know,
You said
I guess yeah, that's like the
The
baseline.
Felden, the Felden what method?
It's called Feldenkrais, Feldenkrais,
And
Feldenkrais method.
what is that?
It's just like it's like a physical therapy. Like it activates, like like if put your hands together, like kind of like you praying with your fingers interlocked. Like now put the fingers interlocked. Yeah, like the way you got it right now. Like so, imagine like why didn't you put the other hand, you see like your left hand and the pinkies on all the way out.
Hmm.
Like that was you did that without thinking. Like if you put it, why didn't you put the grasp another way, like where the other pinky from the other hand? You know what I mean? Like switch it over like one knuckle, like like that. Like why don't your brain naturally go the other way, like with all the fingers?
Uh-huh.
Like I'm just saying, like you put them all like the way you naturally just put your fingers together the first time.
Yeah.
You have like your left thumb over top of your right thumb or whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
So that's like all for you. That's become automatic. So like the Feldenkrais method is like to where you can activate different parts through like stretching and different reaches. You can activate each part of the spine because like so many of our motions have become just like you're moving the whole body. You're not like getting down to like each chamber of the spine, I guess you could say, or the 33 chambers, to
Hmm.
where you can like target that area and so it has maximum mobility.
Hmm.
Certain areas of my back just didn't have the mobility that other areas did, and it just because I'm not even using them specifically. I'm not working them individually. I'm using like my whole back all the time, so it's like gaining atrophy. It's like if you got a finger that's broken and you tape it to the other finger, and you just always keep it taped to the other finger. You know what I mean? But eventually, if you kept it like that, that one finger would just be lame. It wouldn't. It would always be working off the other one. So it's
Hmm.
like the same thing. Same thing with the spine. It's like you got to activate each chamber individually through different reaches and stretches and stuff to where everything is
Yeah.
online, and then you can open up that other part of your brain, like to where you're not doing everything the same every time. It's
Right.
like when people say when people say like brush your teeth with the left hand every other day,
Mm-hmm.
just to activate a different part of your brain, because like it's so I really feel like it's so easy to get caught up in the loops, and then you really like you're really in a bad place where you're not going to start to know the difference between one day and two Thursdays ago, so you don't really know what's a dream and what's last Tuesday, because all the days is kind of the same day. Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people don't remember their dreams, and a lot of people, if you ask them like, what were you doing 5 Tuesdays ago, and they would just be like, oh, I guess I was doing the same shit I always do. And it's not enough contrast ever throughout the day. There's no,
Yeah,
you just stay in like an automaton.
I
And
see.
so the Feldenkrais method helps with just unlocking it like that, man. It's just like the same way you taught yourself to write with your one hand
Yeah.
and hold the pen a certain way. It's just like
Okay.
if you did it with the other hand and did it a different way, you just other
Yeah.
areas
I like
get
that. So
stronger.
you're like deviating from that, from that default programming. It kind of goes back to what you were saying, Taylor, about like resetting those factory settings and like reconfiguring, like upgrading your software, your hardware, like working with your bio machine, this biocomputer of the body. And it's just amazing that we can do things on that level because I would love to know, with all the books, like if people don't know just the tons of content that you put out, let alone just the stream of consciousness and information online where you're speaking, but also just the writings, like the books that I would actually read from your series, where do you feel like all this information was channeled from? Like where is it coming?
Yeah, man. I mean, there's really like kind of one pattern of creation, and I think that like you got to find out how that relates to you, and like just that just exposes, I guess, your daily routine, and like if the daily routine is like kind of being used as a vehicle to, uh, I don't say emulate or just kind. I get emulate's fine to like reflect the true pattern of creation. So certain behaviors, certain habits, they keep your body in alignment in a way to where you can more reflect the patterns of creation, the real core pattern. So then you start to recognize your own patterns, like as far as like throughout the year, throughout the day, like when you have energy for certain things, or when you have your, as you could say, creative cycle. But the whole thing is a creative cycle. It's just you can't put the cart before the horse. Like you have to do each part as it comes to where when it comes time to flower and produce seed or creativity, however way, then you're in alignment to do so, and it doesn't come out filtered in the wrong way. You know what I mean? Like it
Like,
just
like
yeah
for instance, real quick, you can't put the cart before the horse, burning the candle at both ends, and planting the seeds and the flowers and like your metaphors are like on another level, and they're just on the fly. You're one of the only people I know, Taylor. You're one of the only people I know that in the moment, as you're speaking, you can conjure a metaphor from somewhere and just bring it into the fold, and it will make so much sense. Like it will illuminate what you're trying to say in real time, and it's a metaphor. Like they say, that's a genius level. People like Alan Watts, those types
yeah
those types of individuals were able to do that. They were able to break something so scientific, so multi-layered, so logical. They would break it down to a level that was so explanatory. Just so easily able to digest. You know. So I was always wondering, like, I mean, you must have read dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of books, or where is this ability to be able to just, it's very poetic.
yeah. I mean, I definitely at one point I was reading hundreds of books. I'll read like a 300-page book in like a day and a half at one point because I was just reading and doing breath work. So like it would be like a day and a half, 300 pages, and then I was just I was going to this bookstore in Sacramento, and I think it was called Dimple, and you could like exchange books. You sell books back, get new books. So I was just it was in walking distance, so I could just go over there, get a bunch of books, and I just kept doing that, and like my life got really simple. And at one point, I just took in a lot, and it was coming in with at the same time simultaneously with fasting and breath work. But I think too, like just studying. the media, studying whether it be movies, you know, TV, comedy, any of that stuff. I feel like I spend a lot of time on it to where I feel like I could get a lot of the popular culture. So I got a lot of those references there because I just gave that the time. I gave that a lot of time, I guess. And then I just, like I said, I started really getting into the details, you know, of life, I guess you could say, to where I was like just wanting to get more and more specific. And then I'm reading books, taking courses, and then going through my own like personal experiences and consistent breath work. I feel like it allowed me to like melt certain things together to like form a bridge to certain concepts. Like,
Okay.
and some of that is that maybe the Leo and Mercury thing. You know, some people might say that because they were good with, I guess, making metaphors and using examples of memories for expressing concepts. But at this point, I feel like, you know, I'm not really reading that many different books, and it's different books in one respect. I'm just reading the Bible in Hebrew every day. So I've been going through, because I've read the Bible several times, but like reading it in Hebrew forced me to read it like line for line.
Okay.
Every line I'm reading, reading every line 3 times basically, because I read it in Hebrew, and then I read it in English, and then because and then they have it like a way where you can sound it out to help you better sound it out. So I read all 3 lines, and so I'm reading the Bible kind of 3 times in one, and it's in another language, and I just feel like, yeah, and I just feel like, so if if you have certain words that, because like faith isn't really a word in Hebrew, they use the word emunah, and it means a totally different, like the concept itself is different than faith. So it's a misnomer to copy that as faith in the book. So like I'm like, now I have access to this word emunah that expresses something that means a specific thing, and I feel like the more that I get more specific with my words and get access to words that actually describe things accurately, the more I feel like I can just cut all the fat out when it comes to thinking and trying to get things like to bring things together, like to form concepts. I think the more that you can be, what's the word? I was gonna say, there's so many words, like quaint about it. More quickly you can be, the more um, contrite you can be with the expression. The more, I think it's just more impactful it is, because
Okay.
yeah,
Point back
especially with this time.
versus the okay. So the more you are able to express yourself in like a multifaceted way with different words in your arsenal, or in your arsenal, or different things in your lexicon. Like as you're growing, your vocabulary, your vernacular is increasing, then you're able to do more. Because I like the way you said it, Taylor. You said you gained access. You're saying like you found a word and it was like, like you gained
Yeah.
access to this word, and by having access to this word, it gave you the ability to do something that you didn't have before.
Yeah, like it just allows you to conceive of things that you couldn't conceive of before. Like
Okay.
I had a friend as a language teacher, and she was just saying like how like certain words are just no longer being used, and she was like, deleting certain words is just like deleting certain concepts. Because like you can have a bunch of words to try to describe a thing, but there's only one real name for whatever the thing is. Like you could call a person fat and stupid and lazy or whatever, but they're actually a specific thing with a specific name that really actually describes what they are.
Mm,
And that's the same thing with all things. So like there's a real original description of everything, and then that's the only way for you to know like this is that, this, and this is that, that is this, or whatever. Like I know my real name, I know who I am, I know relative to that I can see what all other things are, and if I have the true words to express what they are, then I know essentially fact from fiction. Like I know
okay.
what is, what things really are. Like it's like you could be a hammer, but if I call you a screwdriver, it don't make you a
Right.
screwdriver. And so
Right.
so many things are that way. They just don't express. So many words do not express what you're trying to say, but so it's limiting. And I think you never really line your intentions with your will, because the words they're not giving you. It's not the right formula, so you don't get access to that result.
Okay. Okay. That is a great explanation. I have never heard this before. This is amazing. Like just that it broadens your horizons, that it expands your imagination and brings you away from, I guess, limitation, you know, and like when you don't have the information of a word or a vibration, you know, of a true word. You said a true word. There's actually something that's true that describes this. And if you know it, if you have access to it, then it changes everything, you know, allows you to discern and decipher things. And, you know, when I'm thinking about us, you know, during this conversation, Taylor, you know, if I guess I can imagine there was a time where we didn't have all these words to express, you know? Maybe we didn't have all these sounds that we're just making. Because, I mean, we're just, our mouths are moving, our teeth, our tongue, we're just making sounds, you know? We're just back and forth, but we understand what these sounds that we're making mean, you know, in our context, you know, throughout our learnings, we know what these sounds mean. But really, we're just making sounds right now, you know, back and forth. So what do you feel like is the reassurance that you started to get with books that you might not have got with maybe, you know, maybe someone goes into plant medicine and they feel like that gives them access to something, or maybe goes to, you know, psychedelics, or you know, taking acid or taking edibles or taking this or that. Externally, they feel they'll have access to something. Why did you go to books? Like, why do you still go to books?
Well, I feel like, you know, I definitely have my fair share of entheogens and psychedelic experiences. And I feel like when you read a book, especially if it's like, you know, supposedly a spiritual book, whether it be the Quran or the Bible, you know, any book, and then especially if you read it in another language, or the language is written in, then I think you really, like, it's just a totally different experience, man. Like, I feel like it's a spiritual experience, I guess you could say. It's a metaphysical experience to actually go through the process of reading a spiritual book. Like, the things that are going to get in the way of you reading the book or whatever, or like you can see your will is like challenged to read the book or not read the book or whatever. And you really see, like, how much do I really want to learn? You know,
Mm,
like, and so I think you can't do that with psychedelics every day. I feel like you just can't do that. You can't, like, you have to, in order for you to fully experience them correctly, you have to go time without them.
mm,
But so what are you going to do in that time without them? I feel like you might as well enhance your ability to communicate with yourself. And if you're already thinking in a language anyway, you might as well, because people will dismiss words and stuff and be like, but they're doing it with words. Like, oh, words don't matter. So you're using words to say that.
exactly.
You know, so it's like I might as well use the more clear language if it's gonna be a part of me anyway. If I'm gonna translate everything that I experience into language anyway, it's gonna happen. It's not like just because if I stop I guess identifying with words, it's not gonna go off in my brain. I'm still gonna say, like, this is a house, this is grass or whatever.
Mm,
Like, it's still gonna be there at some level. If somebody asks you, like, hey, what time is it? You're gonna just be like, oh, this isn't. You're gonna recognize, like, let me look for my clock or my watch. Like, it's so I think that words are gonna be there. They're there. So you might as well just use a more concise language, a more direct language, so that there's no way for, because honestly, the more real the language is, it's harder for you to lie. You can't lie as easily in other languages.
mm,
The closer you get to the real one, you know, like if you go back into Hebrew and Arabic, you can lie, but it's, you know, you're getting closer to Medunetter and things like that. You're getting making it more difficult for you to actually lie.
mm,
Like, it's hard to, you know, it's just, it's not geared that way. It's not like, as far as like English, you can say things in a certain way, and it's not technically a lie, but it's, since the language is so hollow in a sense, like, it can be interpreted another way,
okay.
you know, or like kind of absolve somebody of something. Like, there's plenty of times I feel like in English where, you know, you can say, like, oh yeah, I'll look into it, or yeah, I mean, that's interesting or whatever, but it's really not possible for you to speak like that in certain languages, like as far as like biblical Hebrew and stuff. You're
Mm,
gonna be like somebody offers you something and you be like, oh no, that sounds interesting. It's not. It's like there's really no space for that. You'd be like, no, I want it or I don't want it.
okay.
And I feel like in English you can kind of string people along and not say things fully to where there's like this lie through omission, because the language is so, it's not, it's a lazy ass language, and it doesn't have, like, certain things about it, man, like that it's more difficult. Like English in a sense is like it's a slang of multiple languages to where like not much is complete,
Mm.
and then everything is backwards because like English is like German and Latin with some French words in there, and it's like cutoffs or like reductions of original words, and then so much shit is actually just a slang, and
Okay.
then so you like it's the same way that they would have like the common Englishmen. They'd be like, look, you speak the slave English, which is what we speak today, and then the nobles, they'd all know Latin and they'd all speak they'd speak high English, and they would have a totally different access to reality. These other people couldn't even conceive of leaving or changing their circumstance. They didn't
Mm.
have the words for it.
So,
And then so yeah, so like the more because you have to be able to communicate with yourself somehow, some means of doing that. Like
right.
it's gonna and like the more that you get in touch with light itself, like light is light creates pattern. Pure light is pure light. That's just would just be reality. That'd be just experience in eternity or heaven or just reality. But then as far as you know, experiencing separation or the perceived separation, light is going to create patterns, and so those patterns is what all languages really are because every letter is just geometry. So and also it's math because gematria. So all the letters are numbers, and the shapes of them is part of the geometry of it. And so master, as you master language, you should be getting all of those at the same time. But now you have to learn English, and then once you learn enough English, they can teach you chemistry. Whereas before you could learn Hebrew, and at the same time you're learning the periodic table because every letter relates to the periodic table, and every letter is a number, and every letter has a shape that is a geometrical shape. So you're learning geometry, chemistry.
Mm.
You're learning everything at once while you learn the language. Whereas like English is like now I got to learn this language to try to translate trigonometry into English to understand it.
That's
Like it doesn't,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
it's so
make
much
things come.
separation.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're talking about just the value that books have had in your life, before we go, I'd love to hear just for anybody listening, when you said you were reading hundreds at a time from that bookstore, what would you say would be maybe a top three, just for anyone who wants to start to really open themselves up? What were some like just the top three life-changing books that you would recommend for anyone who's listening?
And it's tough to boil it down to three, but I guess the Medu Netter,
Okay.
the Medu Netter, the Tao Te Ching,
Okay.
and the Huahu Ching. And then
Medical,
yeah,
Tao
yeah,
Te Ching,
yeah.
and the Wahoo
Medu
Ching.
Netter, Tao Te Ching, and Huahu Ching. Honorable mentions though would have to be like the further teachings of Lao Tzu and oh man, there's so many books. It's tough, man.
Yeah, it really sounds like Lao Tzu was very prominent, like in your selection. It sounds like because I remember I think Casey was saying that you had her read it on the audiobook or had her listen to it over and over.
Yeah, I mean, I'd always do breath work to it, and so I was like, yo, you should, because that's really where it started for me, man. The first time I could do like over an hour of breath work and actually just do it and just stay on the breath and just do one breath a minute, and I'm just doing it. I listened to the Tao Te Ching on the audiobook back to back.
Hmm.
I listened to it on repeat twice, and that whole experience, that was like really the biggest change more than anything. I feel like, I mean, veganism and all of that led up to that. The experiences brought me to that place, but that was the experience where I was like, all right, yeah, that's how I knew. That's
Hmm.
how I knew. That's how I knew. You know what I mean? Like it was that that
Yeah,
was it, man.
yeah. I mean, there's so many, timeless teachings with Lao Tzu to begin with. I mean, like what you were saying earlier about surrendering, giving everything up. It said like if you want to be given everything, give everything up. If you want to be
Yeah,
full, be empty. There were so many paradoxical sayings like the the straight path seems crooked,
yeah,
like true wisdom seems childish,
yeah,
like
yeah,
there's so many things. that just got you to think, it got you to pause, about the master and the Tao that can be named is not the actual Tao and all this stuff. It made me stop and just wonder about life in general. Yeah.
Yeah. I also like the Art of War, man. I feel like the Art of War is like, I guess that'd be like my fifth. Art of War definitely be up there. Sun Tzu, man. I feel like, because like,
Strategy.
yeah, like the Tao Te Ching is kind of like the art of life, and then the opposite of that, I feel like, is the art of war. And I think the more that you study that, the more that you can see like the war inside yourself, and you can adjust to the way people are trying to play you from the outside. I feel like it's complementary, like really complementary. I think the art of war, because it's just like the Tao Te Ching, where it's like a bunch of different interpretations
Hmm.
of the same thing, and like every general to this day, they all study it around the world because it's so pure. It's like this is the essence of war,
Hmm.
and or if you want to do it correctly, And so I think it's being that we're in a, I guess you say information war, metaphysical war, physical war. I think to know the art of war, then you can kind of, and then you also know the Tao Te Ching and all the other things we talk
Hmm.
about. Then there's no way you won't know what your challenger is up to.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's one of the main things that I got from the Art of War was if you know your enemy and you know yourself, then you need not fear, the result of even like 1,000 battles. You don't need to fear if you know the enemy and know
Yeah,
yourself deeply. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, man.
So, wow, brother. There was one question that came up below. We hadn't gotten a chance to ask it, but Melinda was asking, I'd love to know more about body specific shape, color, response to light and energy. Where can I learn about that? Would you be able to point her in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, you can listen. What is it? Dr. Africa's it's got the book with it just has Africa on it. I forget what it's called. It's like the bio African way of health or something like that. I forget. I'm probably butchering the name. It's been so long. He changed the title too, but it's Dr. Africa's main book. I know some people probably can quote it in here. It's
Okay.
like maybe it's like natural black holistic health or something like that. I forget what it, but
Natural
that book it
holistic.
goes. That one kind of goes into like the race specific stuff a little bit, and then when I took the course, it gave me a lot. I used to have a one of them books with the circular binding that I got from the class. I don't know where it's at no more, but it had like all the different things like you got three levels of tissue in the body. It's like the ectomorphic, endomorphic, mesomorphic, and then you got like kind of like the same thing. Like got three different types of people that are more dominant in the ectomorphic, endomorphic, or mesomorphic.
Hmm.
And so then you have different parts of the body that are more susceptible to different diseases. They might have more strengths or weaknesses depending on which tissue type that you're most dominant in, and because like that's how any disease, like they call it spreading, but it's really just like one whole layer of tissue. It might produce the kidneys and the eyes and um, and your feet or whatever, different parts of your body. So now if you get sick, that whole area gets sick,
Mm.
and then you're like, oh, the cancer has spread. It's like no, just this one layer is totally overrun by some sort of fungus typically,
Okay.
and then yeah, so
Got
I
you.
think that's like yeah, I think that's kind of looking into that. And then looking into like midwifery, I feel like will also help. So because then you can kind of get into you see the development of different babies, the nature of different babies. What?
Midwifery. Okay, like a midwife. Midwifery. I never
Yeah,
even heard of that.
yeah, yeah. I think the
Oh,
more you study that, the more you can see like different babies ain't all the same, and then you could
got you.
also, if you want to, if you really want to know about, because we look different on the outside, we look different on the inside too. It's just it is what it is. Like some people have different shaped hearts, different shaped lungs. It's all generally the same, but the shapes aren't. We don't look. We would look the same on the outside if we looked exactly the same on the inside.
Mm.
And so you can look into cadaver books and different things like that to see the different shapes of different genetics.
Oh wow. That's
Yeah.
that's deep. That's getting deep. I never even thought about that. And like during this live, we actually had a ton of brothers come in here, you know, and they were showing love. Like a lot of brothers who watch you and who view your content and know about you, brother. And you mentioned celibacy. That's one of the things that, I mean, it's really big in the mainstream right now. People talking about semen retention and, you know, no fap and celibacy. You mentioned you did it for a whole year. Why would you suggest that, you know, maybe to, you know, some of the guys out there who have never even done, you know, 8 days versus a whole year of going without?
Yeah, I'm almost up on a year now.
Okay.
Again, so it's been almost it'll be like a year and a few weeks here. But I just feel like, man, you're really not supposed to be playing with that until you're ready. It's just like you're not supposed to ride motorcycles before you can jog. You know, you got to learn how to do certain things first. Like, I think, you know, you really opening your body up to something. You frustrate your body a lot, and emotionally, you frustrate yourself a lot too, because you're initiating something. It's really an abuse of the creative faculties in general of the body. So where you like get it all the way to that point of creation, and then you just withdraw. And the more that you do that, the more that you just wither your own spirit,
Yeah.
because your body is now your body wants to do something because you're bringing it to that place, and then you cut it off, and then you frustrate in the animal part of you. You know, the animated part of you is just more and more frustrated, and so you know your emotional body is just really frustrated. You know,
Yeah.
and so you're just exhausting so much energy in that way. And then if you're busting nuts, it's like you're losing spinal fluid, you're losing prostate fluid, you're losing blood because you have to regenerate all this fluid and all this sperm. It takes a lot of blood to regenerate. So it doesn't really make sense. I think you should have your ducks in a row before you think about initiating the creative process. And that's the difference between, I think, really between men and boys. You know,
Mm.
you're still a boy if you mistreat your own sex organs. Like that's not cool at all. You
Wow.
know, and so I think people they disrespect themselves. So then they get haphazard creation. They just get random. They get random pregnancies and things like that happen, or
Okay.
um, random miscarriages, even abortions. All of that, and that is like massive trauma on the
Mm.
system, whether they acknowledge it or not. And then so
Man.
I think all of that is you might as well just wait, get your ducks in a row, collect yourself in all ways, collect your money and everything. You just collect your energies in all ways, and then you do it. It's not something to just be like play with. I mean,
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
people are gonna have to come to that in their own self. It's nothing I can't
Of
really
course.
say.
Of
Stop
course.
having sex. But
Yeah.
I think I'd be lying if I said like, yeah, it's all right to just to play with yourself like this, like with a partner, basically. You're not even really having sex. You just masturbating each other. Like it's
You're the
abusive.
first person I've heard say that, like in that way that you said that, brother. You said that that's actually the differentiator. Like that's the difference between boy and manhood is playing with the manhood. Like when you're saying if you're still on that level, you haven't graduated yet.
Yeah, man. And we live in a place where you can kind of hide it a little better. People might have a nice car, a nice house, or flashy things, but they don't even have any control over their sexual faculties. So people might perceive them as winning, but they like the biggest losers because they're creating haphazardly. And you might not see it for a generation; they might get away with it for two, but the ignorance is going to creep back around. You create unconsciously, you just invite something down the road that's going to be catastrophic. So I think um, that's really kind of where people are in a sense where people can just hide it better, so they don't really get a clear view of what it does to people. If people would have to be honest, where they was like, I got this chick pregnant randomly, or I had this abortion, and they really were honest with themselves about what that did to them on a psychological, metaphysical level, it would at least be an example for people, because it's not cool at all. It's the least cool shit to do.
Yeah.
So I think if people, and then or you just, and at the bare minimum, you're not getting people pregnant. You still basically impregnating the chick's mind and like breaking her own trust with herself, because now
Mm.
she lets you in her body, and then to start creation, and now nothing ever happens. So now she does this with multiple men, dozens of men, and now there's so much lack of trust there. It's like that's why people have cryptic dreams now, because there's no trust inside them. So their body don't trust them, and so now the only way they can get messages to themselves is through some cryptic ass message they got to decipher, and instead of having just that's again with the knowing Hebrew or Arabic, Aramaic or whatever, Gaelic, those things, then you have a better chance of deciphering your dreams. Like you trying to decipher a cryptic message into English, good luck, man. Take you forever, man. To really get to and you're not getting them. You're not getting because every dream is like a sequence. Like you get a dream on Monday night, and then it's all kind of bringing you to the next Sunday. Like you're getting all these different chips and like pieces. Like it's like a movie. The next scene, and then so you can really properly digest it and move forward, and act accordingly. But people might get like one of the dreams out of the week, and then they decipher the one dream into English the best they can, and it don't really. It's like starting a movie in the middle. They don't really know what this means.
No.
Like, yeah.
Man, man. Thank you for that breakdown, brother. Thank you for that. And just the last thing is right there. I don't know if you can see it, but that's the very last one is by Carlitos. He dropped that at the very beginning. And do you see what the question says?
Yeah. The difference between knowledge and belief. Like when someone asks you, like if you killed someone, if you say like I heard that I killed them, you could say I believe he killed that man. But if you saw it, if you saw it, then you know it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like when it comes to knowledge is light, and when you're seeing something from like for what it is, like it's all being transmitted through the eyes as a conduit to the brain, but like ultimately what you have, your vision is internal. Everything that's being brought from the outside in, that's getting translated through the eyes and brain, that's fine and it helps and everything, but your actual vision for reality is an inner vision. It's insight, so it's inner visibility.
Yeah.
So like if you have that, then I feel like you can, when you actually have to weigh something and you have that inner vision, and then you can say like, okay, this is light or this is not light, because belief is like you can't fully trust it, man. It's not something that you actually know. You haven't seen it on the inside.
Right.
You can see it if you can see it on the inside, then it's actually real. It's eternal.
Mm-hmm.
If everything else is everything else, it's all temporary. So it's lies are temporary, so
Okay. I
I
like
think
that.
that,
So
yeah,
if it's internal, it's eternal.
yeah, that's where the real vision of eternity is coming from. Like, even though everything is experienced internally, ultimately, I guess just for lack of a better way to say it, that inner vision, like
Mm-hmm.
when people talk about the first eye or the
Right.
third eye or the heart eye, whatever you want to call it, like having access to that and actually having vision there, there's no way for you to like maintain that without connecting with the breath,
Mm.
because the breath circulates the blood, and then the more that you control in the breath, the more blood you get circulated to the brain. If you're got your eyes closed, you're in a dark space, you're doing that, you can see all the light in the blood circulating through the brain. And the more that you get, you're doing breath work, the more that you do that, the more that whole area lights up, because the blood is just more in the brain, more in the central nervous system,
Right.
to where now you're getting that third eye open, you're getting that actual internal vision. And the more that you can access that gently and naturally, not like through the back door with psychedelics and things like that, if you do it through the front door gently and naturally, then now you just have access to actual sanity, actual reality, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because sanity just means sanitary, so it just means like pure light. And the only way that you can really get access to pure light is internally, to perceive it. I mean, I guess the best you could,
Yeah.
because it's not anything. Your eyes can't pick it up. Pure light, you're gonna close your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like if you do DMT, you see like your eye opens up on the inside, then you can see inside. Now you have this perception, and what do you do after that? You do the DMT now. What do? You're just gonna do DMT for the rest of your life? You
Nah,
can't do that
man.
every day.
Nah, definitely.
So like, so just do breath work, and then you live off your own natural DMT, and then you're gently getting those messages every day from yourself, and
Good
it's
for
not gonna be, yeah, it's not gonna be flashy and gaudy. It's just gonna be direct messages. They're not gonna be cryptic. You know how to really communicate with words. You can decipher the cryptic ones if necessary, and now you know the difference between knowledge and belief, because one is light and one is just a shadow. It's
beautiful.
like, yeah.
Beautiful. So beautiful. I love that. I love that. Through the front door, not the back door. You know, it's
Yeah.
front door, not the back door. I like that. That sanitary is your sanity. It just means sanitary. I love the etymology. You know, the etymology, the psychology, just the whole philosophy, just the way you break it down. You know, eloquently. I really appreciate this today. You know, this was our first live that we did together. I had no idea where it was gonna go. I just wanted to let it flow. And you definitely did that, brother. I just wanted to thank you. You know, thank you for doing that. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for just, coming here and giving a testimony from your own authenticity and just from the heart, for real. Like, thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you, man. Yeah, thank you for having me, man. I guess have a good night, everybody, man, and enjoy the rest of your day over there. And you said Texas, right?
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
would you let people know just real quick where they should go if they want to get your offerings, any services, anything that you have, if we have a website that people can go to get all your books and stuff?
Yeah, they can just DM me and stuff because I got banned on Amazon, and
Oh,
so like,
okay.
yeah, I got banned on Amazon like the end of 2022. They cut me off from selling the printed books and the ebooks,
Okay.
and
So send you a DM.
so people, yeah, so people can DM me and I can email them the PDFs if they want, and yeah, if they want to talk about something else, we can do consultation or whatever too. But patreon.com/Taylor Durden.
There it is.
That's my Patreon. $4 a month. Patreon.com/Taylor Durden. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. Beautiful, brother.
Uh,
Hey, man, you
Thank
enjoy
you.
the rest of your day.
You
Enjoy
too, man.
family.
You
Enjoy.
Yeah, thank you, man. Peace, bro.
All right. Peace.